Hello there. I've been watching a few videos today, just for a change. I watched Peter Elston speaking with Michelle Warden on Peter's channel. And that's very, very interesting discussion there. Looks into, and Michelle brings up the issue of there was a lot of potential evidence from maternity or obstetrics that should have found its way into the trial, in terms of the background of the babies that are on the indictment and what conditions they had. And I'm just doing this from memory now. Is it Dr. McCormack, who's the obstetrician? He was like the head of that unit, and he had a very particular view with certain babies that they would have they were in trouble, as it were. There was real problems there with related to the placenta and so forth, and that he wasn't surprised that that baby had sadly died, and yet he wasn't called, and so obviously had he given that view to the jury, that could have made a huge difference. And Michelle Warden makes that point, and that subject as a whole, I know Operation Merlin Falcon has been talking about for a long time as well. That he always says it's go back further to prior to when many of these babies actually end up in the neonatology unit. You've got to look back further and look at the stillbirths as well. And I keep banging on about this. I don't know. It's just instinctive strangeness. And I'm referring to the 2018 FOI again, which was superseded. But then, anyway, referring to that with regard to stillbirths, you've got, just from memory again, you've got 2015, 12 stillbirths, 2016, 2, 2017 up to 11. And then all the other years on either side, they're either 9s, 8s, 10s. So it's really odd, isn't it? That dip. I don't know what it means, but it means something. It means something. Another interesting thing in it's all interesting. It's all very fascinating and compelling in Peter and Michelle's discussion is that Peter mentions an FOI with regard to multiple births, twins and triplets, that he's made. And he says he's still waiting for the answer, but a sort of preliminary answer they gave him with regard to it costing too much to give him the information. And I've sent him, once I'd watched that video, I'd sent him a copy of the FOI response that I did a recent short video about, in which I say that wasn't their reason. It was, they don't mention money to me. They just say it's all about the relative small numbers could end up unwittingly identifying people, individual parents, and thereby individual babies potentially. And that was the reason for not being able to give this comparative information of years before and after 2015 and 2016 to see whether there was an extraordinary, a relatively higher number of twins and triplets being looked after in the neonatal unit in 2015, 2016 compared to the years before and after. And then I've just watched a brilliant video by A Liberated Mind. It's a fantastic channel as well. I'll link that below as well. And no doubt many of you have seen it already. And it's with regard to the idea of the agreed facts or the alleged agreed facts of insulin poisonings that has been around for a long time, really, that the idea of that. And Liberated Mind's position is that it wasn't an agreed fact. And it's a fascinating video in all kinds of ways, as all of his is great analysis. And I don't feel I'm on top of things as I thought I was before. And, well, how can you ever be on top of all of this? But I want to say something about it, about the let me rewind a little bit. Liberated Mind goes back to Science on Trial, Sarita Adams, and the idea that there was an early discussions about that it was an agreed fact, hence you couldn't you couldn't bring a legal challenge because Myers and co had agreed with however they come to these agreements with the prosecution, that they agreed that there was a poisoner out there, essentially. And A Liberated Mind is saying no, that isn't the case, and he adduces certain bits of the judge's summing up and other aspects to show that why he believes it wasn't an agreed fact. And I totally get what he's saying, A Liberated Mind, and he says it so convincingly and brilliantly, and he's a brilliant guy. I'm just wondering, I wasn't going to do a video, but it's just got me thinking a bit that I can understand that it wasn't an agreed fact, and I don't know what the mechanism is for that. Do they sit around a table and say, let's say it was an agreed fact, but the previous idea that we had of it is that they say, well, yeah, we know there's a poisoner here, but it's just not our client. We're going to agree there's a poison. We're not going to challenge there's a poisoner here. And this is where I agree with The Liberated Mind. I don't think, and it's only since I've watched his video that I think there's other kind of subtleties to it, that it's about what's being agreed then, and it might not even be about agreement or not agreement. I'm just going to try and explain what I mean. I'm trying to think it through as I'm saying it, and it's the idea that what the defense felt they were stuck with were those test results, and at that time they didn't feel they had the ability to combat them. They didn't have strong enough opposition to say those test results are meaningless, are completely without any basis at all, and because you didn't get the extra mass spectrometry tests, those tests are worthless for whatever reason. I don't know. They didn't feel confident enough to say those tests are absolutely worthless. There was some prodding going on, wasn't there, in which Myers asked, I think it was Anna Milan, one of the lady from the laboratory, and he said, well, look at this bit in red here. It says that it advises you, if you suspect exogenous insulin, you've got to send it off to a laboratory. And I remember this because I remember the quote from the trial. Anna Milan says, yeah, that's advisory. It's just advisory. And I remember doing a video about it and saying, oh, she's using like this magical language, like advisory means, you don't have to take any notice of it, even though it's in red, and it's an injunction. It's telling you you've got to do it. It's telling you you've got to do it. And then you use this magic word and say advisory, and then suddenly it's all, no, you don't have to do it then. And this is all you need. So, but the defense was stuck with that, and they didn't have the arguments that have come out since, or so we understand. We want to believe they didn't have those arguments. Well, the arguments about this very recent thing about that anomaly, that 800% anomaly, where I can't remember the acronym, but the guiding institution for laboratories said, you're out here by 800%. And they didn't have, and Myers didn't seem to have, and including his neonatology expert that he didn't call in conjunction with him, didn't seem to have the confidence to start talking about sort of interference and using the arguments that Shu Li used about this, these boluses of glucose setting up this. I'm trying to do it all from memory. Instead of giving a steady drip of glucose in solution, giving these boluses one after the other, causing this kind of ratcheting up of insulin in the blood. That was one of the things that was said at one of the at the most recent press conference with Shu Li there, some time ago now. So he didn't. It's as though, well, I'm assuming between Peter Hall, Professor Hall, and Myers, they didn't have that solid argument to use. Otherwise, if they had had it, why wouldn't they have used that, for example? Why wouldn't they have talked about other possible reasons why that test shouldn't be relied upon. There was a kind of a sort of prodding, as I said, of Anna Milan. It says here on your own documentation you've got to send it off for these other tests. So I get what a liberated mind is saying. So my computer's just oh god, updates. I can't stand updates. I think they're putting spyware on everything. I don't believe it. Anyway, that's gone off the boil now. This idea about the agreed fact. Perhaps there just was an agreement that, well, maybe there was never an agreement. That's what liberated mind's saying. And the examples that he gives, it does show that they were pushing back on it. The defence were pushing back on it. And then you've got this exchange between Johnson and where he tries to corner her, and she said, "Well, yeah, okay, I accept that. I can see that you've got the tests here. It just wasn't me. It wasn't me that did that." Were the defence in a situation like this, that it's the burden of the prosecution to prove, as A Liberated Mind covers this bit, to say that they've got to prove that exogenous insulin was put into those TPN bags, and B, that it was done and done maliciously by Nurse Lucy Letby, and that's their burden. The defence don't have to disprove that they didn't want to work with the burden. They don't feel it is their burden to disprove those tests. They're kind of stuck with them in some way, unfortunately, or maybe they shouldn't have been. They should have been more aggressive with them, and maybe they just didn't have, between Myers and Professor Hall, they didn't have the range of arguments that have come up since, which is a concern in and of itself, I suppose, isn't it? Well, it is. So what's being agreed to, not agreed to, is maybe it's neither agreement nor not agreement. It's just the fact, well, the burden's on you, prosecution, to say that this person did this thing maliciously. So what else does it leave as a possibility? It leaves the defence saying, well, okay, even if these tests were saying that some insulin got into those bags, who's to say A, it was done maliciously for the purpose of harming a baby? Who's to say it wasn't an accident, for example? And who's to say that it was by Nurse Lucy Letby that did it? And that's the burden. That's Liberated Mind says. He quotes something where he says, you've got to prove that A, it was given. That insulin was in those TPN bags, and B, that Nurse Lucy Letby did it. And then the kind of the tacit aspect of that, really, because of where they are in a trial, murder trial, is that it was done deliberately in order to harm with malice aforethought. And that's all the burden of the prosecution. So maybe that's at that time, back in 2023, 2022, 2023, that's all they felt, not so much that they needed to do, but all they could do. And we know so much more, or there's been so many more arguments since. So I don't know if any of this makes sense. It's just fascinated me, A Liberated Mind's video and his argumentation there about, okay, and we were working with this idea, and perhaps that idea was a misunderstanding of what happened in that courtroom, with whatever the actual machinations are to have an agreed fact. But maybe that was just a false inference that perhaps Sarita made and other people made, and en route, and just it was passed on as a baton. And that's kind of what I think Liberated Mind is saying, that it was a misapprehension of what had happened there. But neither, I don't know. What am I trying to say? Can you help me? Can it be neither an agreed fact nor that they felt they had to disprove it either? They didn't have to disprove it because it wasn't their burden to disprove it. But it's a risky thing to do, isn't it? So my kind of gut feeling now is it's just, yeah, okay, it wasn't an agreed fact. But the combating of that test, which seemed to be artificially used to damn Nurse Lucy Letby, wasn't sufficiently fought. Maybe they just didn't have the wherewithal to do it. I mean, and if that is the case, then we've got to consider that they need a specific expert for it, and Professor Hall probably wasn't that person. They needed a specific insulin expert on it, that such as the people that have been looking into it as part of the convened panel and under the guidance of Dr. Shuley. That's what they needed there, isn't it? And that's what was missing. Who would have then been in the witness box and given evidence in order to undermine the apparent certainty that this poisoning had happened. See, it's just striking me again that this is the trouble with this, and this is what I've had all the way along. It's like these two sections. There's the insulin cases, and then there's all the other ones, and they each weirdly, wrongly, perversely, darkly, sinisterly support each other. Just imagine, as thought experiment, had there been none of the other quote unquote cases, well, it would never have got to trial. But just imagine this. Just imagine it's all about baby F and baby L, and it's two attempted murder cases. Well, it wouldn't have got to trial, but let's just imagine it did. Would Nurse Lucy Letby have been found guilty of that? But well, no, of course not. Well, people say, well, how do you know it was her? It could have been anybody. And this is the thing that Angela on Twitter, and I did a video about it, Angela on Twitter, I don't know her surname, but she just said, well, as soon as you've got it's so simple that what Angela said, it's just devastatingly simple, and it should blow it all out of the water. As soon as you've got the idea of pre-preparing a TPN bag that somebody else is going to hang up, then it doesn't matter who's on shift then, does it? Because it could have it could have happened 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 6 days ago. So therefore you don't know who's done it. But this is the monstrousness of it. It's because of all the other stuff, all the made up stuff of Dewey Evans with all the other aspects. Because Dewey Evans stuff alone wouldn't have flown. We know that. It needed this. It needed this. It needed this construction on top of it. But back to what Angela said. Sorry if this is a bit all over the shop. Maybe I'm just not thinking clearly. Well, I am thinking clearly. It's just... Yeah, she goes, well, it doesn't matter who's on duty if you're doing something in advance. Because if you're doing something in advance, and you're telling us this, prosecution, you're saying, oh, it was done in advance. When the bag tissue, they had to replace it with another one, and apparently that had some of it in it. And you got the old quote about the Nostradamus thing. Well, when then? It's all about the when. And if you can't say when the thing is, well, you don't know who was around to do it at a time you do not know and cannot know and did know and did never know and they never said they knew. It's so weak and ridiculous and it should never ever have worked. Just these two monstrous sections bolted together to create this Frankenstein monster of a... It's nothing new what I'm saying. I've said this hundreds of times about that. Each bit makes the other bit live. It's a zombie. Each bit is a zombie. all of Evan's rubbish is a zombie thing that isn't alive even. It's the undead or whatever. You bolt on the head of these faked up insulin cases, and that drags the corpse of the other stuff along. But conversely and perversely, the other stuff actually makes the insulin stuff work, quote unquote work. What else I was going to say? Oh, it's the other bit in A Liberated Mind. A gentleman talks about Liberated Mind talks about Breary as well, and him finding that. But we're stuck with this issue about doctors. It was Doctor. Don't tell anybody. It was Dr. Z.A. that tells him a year before he suddenly finds it, as though she's never told him. Why did he hang on to it? Why does he hang on to that information for over a year while the investigation has started? Why does he hang on to it? Why doesn't he go straight away to them in 2017, as soon as Dr. Z.A. lets him know about it? It is Dr. Z.A., isn't it? Don't tell me he's not. Or is it Dr. V? It's the one that's on maternity leave. It's been so long since I've looked at it. Dr. V. Oh, no. Dr. V is Dr. B. Oh, God. It's Dr. Z.A., isn't it? It's Dr. Z.A., yeah. It's Dr. Z.A. We know the name of that person. You're not meant to say it because they're all anxious and everything. You don't want to make them anxious. And the court have said, they've got to be anonymous for life, haven't they? Because it just makes it work for these bastards that have constructed all this, makes it all work nicely for them, It's all part of the weird construction of it, They know what they're doing, Nothing's done by chance. But anyway, why did he hang on for it for a year, It wasn't his find. He didn't find it. He was told about it. None of it makes sense, does it? Did he not? See, I'm going back to this bit now where I think that hardcore of those doctors, I don't think they wanted it to become a murder case. They wanted her out of there, and that would have been enough. But then you've got this thing that Michelle Warden reminds us of Dr. McCormack, I think it's McCormack, making this, she says, a kind of a crude sort of joke. Oh, you're either running a bad unit down there. This is in September 2015, I think Michelle Warden says. So either a bad unit down there or you've got a serial killer on. And then later the next year in a meeting, he says you're harboring a murderer. And then he's not joking then, apparently. He's not joking. But what I think was missing, and I don't know whether it's deliberately missing or just... Well, no, this is the bit I wanted to interject. I'm not saying it's missing. When Michelle Warden talks about that with Peter, it's about this McCormack guy from obstetrics, from the maternity ward, when he says you're harboring a murderer, he's not doing that. He's not doing that in 2016 now at a meeting, which he sort of apologizes for in a letter, which isn't an apology. And he said, I didn't know it was you, I was just saying whoever it was, they're a murderer or whatever. It's all weird. They're a bunch of fucking weirdos, aren't they? But, what am I saying? McCormack, he hasn't done that independently, like nobody else is talking about it. That's the currency that's going on around, of gossip all around the place into 2016. He's just joining in with that. He's been fired up to that. I mean, he might be instigating some of it. He might be part of it. He's a carrier of it. He's a carrier of the gossip. But he's not independently thinking of it and saying to them, oh, you're harboring a murderer here. And the other people go, oh, do you think that as well? We've been thinking about that. We've been gossiping, and the junior doctors have been saying that this is nurse death and everything, and everyone's been talking about that in the corridors and in the lunch queues. JR, No, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of the malice, le grand malice, whatever malice is in French. It's all part of the grand scapegoating, isn't it? And he's part of it as well. He's not just a separate thing. And I'm not saying Michelle Warden said he was, but I just wanted to say that. He ain't come out of nowhere saying that. It's what's going down. It's what's being. It's the talk of the hospital. What that section of the hospital, but not just that section of the hospital. It's getting out to Alderhay, and Breary tells us that. Because he tells us that in Thirlwall, and he said he goes there and he says I just speak to people at my level, essentially, and I talk to them about our problem. I talk to them about our issue, our problem, Cosa Nostra, our thing. I talk to them. So it's all getting out. And then by extension here, and this is Liberated Mind, does a sort of mentions this as well, as to whether Evans got to know about it prior to him contacting the NCA, and quite possibly, it's about proving. We need to prove it, and whether he was at the Welsh Paediatric Society meeting in May of 2017 in Chester. Would need to prove it. I mean, and even if he was, then you'd have to prove that. It would mean something. It would mean something. People out there know more. What I mean is, there's people out there to. There's people out there. Jonathan Coe in a comment mentioned to me. I think it was a comment to me, wasn't it? Jonathan said about the second report that Evans did about baby C, that he gave the CPS stroke Cheshire Police, and that they won't release it. And can we get it? As far as I'm aware, they haven't released it or sent it to Mark McDonald's team. That's what we heard, didn't we? Unless there's an update I've missed, and it could well have done, because I've not been totally on watching as many things as I have before. Are they still waiting for that? Are they still pushing for it? Shouldn't the CPS be made to hand that over, that report, or the police? Sorry, I don't know who's in whose custody it is, but shouldn't they be made to do that? Evans's second report about baby C, once he's changed his mind. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Just CCRC just got to do the right thing, If they're capable of it, just got to do the right thing, innit? CCRC, just got to do it. That's simply what you've got to do. Refer it to the Court of Appeal, just what you've got to do. And then what happens? And then the CPS say, oh, we've looked at what you're going to be bringing, and we're not going to contest this. You've got to cross. There's no case to answer. I don't know exactly how it will happen legally in those terms, but the idea of it being quashed rather than it being a retrial, because then we're not going to refight it again. We're not going to do it. They had one go at. They could only do that hideous charade once. They won't be able to do it now. They won't be able to do it now, and they won't be able to find anybody to work with them now. They're not going to wheel out Evans. To say he's a busted flush would be to commend him, wouldn't it? And the others won't be rocking up, and that's why they've staged Sturm as well. All that other bunch of clowns, just after easy payday. I'm talking about those experts, so-called, that chimed in with Evans behind him, and nobody's going to be hearing from Bowen again. Bowen don't want to touch that. None of them. So it's not going to. And this is the fulcrum. Then this is why in CCRC, as soon as they do that, then it's. I think it can only go one way. It has to end up with the convictions being quashed. I think it has to. Can't conceivably imagine. Can't imagine a retrial with what's come out in the interim since the convictions. Can any of you imagine one? Can you see? What would it look like? What would the prosecution look like in the face in the face of what the defence would actually be, with Shuley and all these experts from across the world. Ain't going to happen. They can't happen, can it? So anyway, I keep repeating myself. Stop it. It's not going to happen. But it's CCRC, it's kind of down to them now, isn't it, really? Rather than almost down to the Court of Appeal, because I think then... But I'm obviously not that familiar with the legal system, that how would that actually work? But, well, if they refer it, then to the Court of Appeal, they can't deny that, can they? It's been referred to them. So then Court of Appeal then revert to the CPS and say, well, are you ready to bring it again then? Are you ready? Is that how it works? CPS, are you ready to do this again then? Are you going to do this again? Because we need to give this a second shot then. You need to do it. Are you ready? CPS go, no, we're not going to do it again. We can't. It's going to be so appallingly embarrassing for us, and we'll already look like complete scumbags and mugs, and highly deceptive and weird and very dark. So we're not going to do it again, no. Anyway, got to hope that the CCRC do the right thing, and things will flow from there, and there'll all be positive things flowing from there once the CCRC make the right decision. Anyway, take care. All the best. Bye-bye.